I'm so pleased to see concerned people here, and you should be concerned. This is a map that we put together 2 years ago to try and alert people, because almost nobody seemed to be concerned about the announcement of this project. The blue line was then what the Perth Freight Link was. It's coming from the Kewdale area where most of the trucks come from, and the trucks have been coming mostly down Leach Highway, the green line. Let me see if this works. Yes, that's the green line. Okay, that's Leach Highway. So now it takes the trucks around and back onto Leach Highway, and then to the port. Why would you do that? This is the city of Melville, and they had a policy to get rid of trucks. And over here is the seat of Riverton, and the member was elected on the fact that he would get rid of trucks from Leach Highway. So we have something set up to say, let's take the trucks off that and take them around here, and it doesn't really matter where else they go. But as long as they're not going through Melville. That's not a great way to plan a new piece of infrastructure. $2 billion project. Now, it was meant then to be a toll road. We still don't have any details about that, but the toll road, and that's going to go around here. And now we've got a bit here, which is the tunnel. But you could go this way still without a toll, and it's shorter. You start to wonder, has this been thought through? Now, Kewdale's not going to move. This is clearly a major area of freight production, and containers are going to and from there the whole time. You definitely are going to have to link to Kewdale. So our report, when it first came out 2 years ago, was called Perth Freight Link, great idea, wrong port. Because this is a sailing ship port. It was designed by C.Y. O'Connor to shelter sailing ships inside a river mouth. That's the way sailing ships' ports were built around the world. Find a river mouth, get inside it, and then you're out of the wind, and you can anchor there and disgorge all your goods and people. That's what it was built for. This was not built for containers. It's a small container port, and all around the world you've got ports like that have pushed their containers out to a much larger space and redeveloped their cities that are around that. Beautiful old cities, because they were built around sailing ship ports, and they have flourished. So we were saying this is time that we shifted containers out of this port. It was difficult because in Fremantle, this is a working port, and we believe in providing work for the workers here and all of that. And it's hard to say, well, just shift it out. So there was a policy of saying, let's at least transition it out. What's happened now is that the row 8 comes through to there, and then the row 9 is in a tunnel coming out just past the golf course, and it then goes through East Fremantle to North Fremantle. And there is no plan for this area. There will just be a lot of trucks coming through and another 70,000 cars, because that is what they're planning that capacity for. So Infrastructure Australia was given the Row 8 project to assess, and found it very difficult to assess in any positive way because it didn't seem to be anything by itself. Then suddenly the Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, announced that he wanted a Perth Freight Link and that it would go direct to the port along this way. And they've been struggling ever since to try and assess it. It's very hard to assess something the Prime Minister's already announced, because most roads are not designed by Prime Ministers. They're designed by various groups at lower levels, and they bring them to the top, and you try to get them assessed and get funding. So suddenly we've now got an extra amount of money for the tunnel, so it's no longer the same project they first looked at. Now, apparently Road 10 isn't considered important enough to do anything over here, so you'll just get more trucks and more cars in this area. So North Fremantle and East Fremantle don't matter. This was in the Joondalup Times. It was meant to ease congestion. Yes, well, it's not. Now, the outer harbour, it has been on the books since around 2001, 2002, when the first, well, in fact, it's been there since Stevenson, actually. He first started talking about the outer harbour, and it's been a bulk terminal, a bulk port for some time. But as a container terminal, it's been more recently on the agenda. This comes from back in that time, and the idea was to go around like this and have a port here, and maybe there's a private port was down here, and this is the one that Alana McTiernan proposed at the time, which is in the middle of Cockburn Sound, which I don't think is a very good idea, and it's probably rejected now. The red area is latitude 32. It's a land core intermodal port where trucks and trains can interchange and containers can be adequately handled. We've got a little country rail linking into the city which can't take long trains or double stacking anything. And all of those good freight management systems could be put there. So Landcor's actually been making that. It's now available. So the government was actually very committed. And if you look at the Perth and Peel to 3.5 million, that's the latest major planning system. It doesn't even mention the Perth Freight Link. It does talk about the outer harbour. So where has this come from, you say? Well, it seems crazy that we're dealing with a road that even the state government didn't want or didn't have any idea about. So this is what it is. This is now the Indian Ocean Gateway, which Carol Adams is here from Kwinana. The City of Kwinana have done all this work themselves to try and say, this is a real port. See, that's the size of a real port with all the land backing facilities, all the opportunities for creating new kinds of jobs, a big port, and there's the tiny little sailing ship container harbour there. And you can put road and rail connections directly to it. This is Anketel and Rowley roads, which were designed to go to the outer harbour. So you've got the access, you've got the size, this is where the harbour should be. Now Rethink the Link have come out with a big wraparound that was in the Herald, not the wraparound, the brochure that was in the Herald. It was very nicely done, and it shows the same size as well. You see, there's the container terminal now. This is what they're saying should be. This is the road and rail connections. The Kwinana Council have even done a few drawings which shows the size of this down there at Kwinana. Now, you'll have Cameron Edwards speaking to you. He's a genuine expert on freight and logistics, an economist who's done this kind of work that is at the basis of it. Fremantle Port, this is the largest ship that's been, and the upper limit in Australia is there. Some of the big container ships are now up this level. They can't come into any Australian port, let alone Fremantle. They go to Singapore and they break them up into smaller loads to bring down here. So we're already a third-rate port. Is this what we want? We wouldn't put up with it if it was the airport, would we? This is a third-rate port. So Now, I mentioned before that offshore port idea. It is a bit silly to build one out here when you can have all that land-backed area. This is the original private port that was already been approved by the EPA to build down there. So there's a lot of work been going on there. It just got all stopped. And it will stop dead. There will not be anything done down there for the next 50 years if this $2 billion Perth Freight Link goes through. You don't get $2 billion for freight every year. You know, this is a big amount of money. It's the biggest infrastructure project we've had in the state. And we're putting it into a sailing ship port that will be rapidly out of date. Now, the other issue that's been talked about is seagrass down there, that if you build the outer harbour, there'll be massive environmental problems. Well, those roads are already through. There's not a big problem crossing like there is at Bibra Lake. This is the seagrass here. These are the two port areas. There's a little bit of reef there, but it's not seagrass. Seagrass is out here. So it's complete furphy to say that seagrass is going to be a problem associated with this outer harbour. How did it happen? It was dropped by Tony Abbott. Tony Abbott announced $40 billion Roads for Australia project as part of the election that he won. And when he came in, he said, I want to build the Perth Freight Link, the East-West Link in Melbourne, and the West Connex in Sydney. The East-West Link went to an election and they lost that election and Labor cancelled that whole project. It was a $12 billion project. It was cancelled. The West Connex is having similar problems in Sydney, big problems. They just had an audit, a general's report done on it that says this makes no economic sense. The Perth Freight Link is going through the same processes. We've had announcements today in the ABC saying there is still no business case that's been approved by the federal government, which is why there's no money being released. So it's a mess. Now, I have a bit of sympathy for the state government, actually. I don't think they were taken by surprise. It just was so, here, you want $2 billion for a road? You've got to have it shovel ready. You've got to do it quick. Just get going. The outer harbour wasn't quite ready. It's a lot more ready now because we've started to realise, well, we've got to get moving on this. But it completely upset the approvals process to have a top-down, a Prime Minister announcing a road. Prime Ministers don't design roads. And it really did upset the whole way in which the system copes with it, and it hasn't. Infrastructure Australia, when I was on it, had never heard of the road. So, and the other problem in this was that Fremantle wasn't really quite ready to lose its port. Now, I think that the agenda to say the port needs to shift, let's start that process now, get it going, cancel that road, and put the money into building the full access to the outer harbour. That is the agenda. The row 8, the row 9, the row 10 must be stopped. And it is potential, this was on the brochure, it is potentially there to create on the Victoria Harbour side a beautiful new area that can be like Darling Harbour, it can be like South Bank, it can be like in Singapore. The old port in Singapore, it's been completely renewed and revived. The containers are all out. I've forgotten the name of it now, but it's a beautiful area. And even people are starting to think about and design crazy things like this, which is potentially there if we can start to have a different future. The reality is, if you do that, you will increase values in this area, you'll increase values in Rockingham, you'll increase commercial values around this harbour down here, which is what they want. Right now, it is very mean, nasty and vindictive to have started building this road. There's not even a full business case yet for the money. It has been started. Why? Because if you start this sort of thing, then you upset the greenies, you get votes because you're taking on the greenies or something. I don't understand, but it's totally unnecessary, and a lot of bush has been cleared unnecessarily. But there's groups like Coburn Wild that are planning now the rehabilitation of this area all the way through, that there would be a beautiful green link from the wetlands to the waves. And if you want to see more on this, we've just produced a little film. Linda Blagg here, the filmmaker. Angry Academics, Why Row 8 Should Not Proceed. There's about 30 professors have got together because they're very upset about this. It's a 9-minute film on YouTube. There's a lot more to be said, but I think you can see this is not right to build the Perth Freight Link through this area. You deserve better. Thank you.